All right, guys, we got to move on to the biggest story of the week, which is our sitch. We were going to talk about squids and Venezuela, which, again, tomato.
Not squids. We were going to talk about cuttlefish.
First of all, they shouldn't be called fish. They're actually squids or octopi, octopuses. It's wrong to call a cuttlefish a fish. It's a squid. Fight me. But really quickly, before we talk about the stimulus, thank you to Electric Blue Omelet Dragon, Joanna Davis, and Kimberly McNaught, Pete from Oakland, Parker and Brent Andrews for your super chats. You're so sweet. Andrew Martin on YouTube, I'm bitching about the end of representative government everywhere. That's a good reason. Tell me what to put. Greg Abbott is obviously trying to distract from his failures during the snowstorm. Absolutely. And Luna Diana, right-wing view with left-wing aesthetic is what is referring to Kyrsten Sinema. Right-wing view with left-wing aesthetic. Exactly. If I wear a crazy skirt, it means I'm liberal. Oh, man. Guys, the biggest news is that this weekend, the Senate passed a stimulus bill. And this is huge. And I'm just going to quickly, we'll take it in chunks, but specifically what it did and how it happened and what got left out. It includes a lot of good stuff, a lot of stuff that could be better. But basically, $1,400 direct payments for anyone making under $75,000 a year, plus $1,400 for each of those people's kids or dependents. Not the $600 like under Trump, $1,400. Then there's an additional child tax credit. Americans will get $300 per child for those under age 5 and $250 for kids between 6 and 17 for an entire year. There's an extended unemployment benefits, $45 billion in rental, utility, and mortgage assistance, $30 billion for transit agencies, billions for small businesses and live venues. Hey, stand-up comedy.
By the way, I think that partly was Chuck Schumer who really fought for that kind of
live venues?
Mm-hmm. For theaters. That was a part of, but I mean, look, he represents New York. That's a huge part of New York. That's so don't give him immense credit. But by the way, just, 2021 Chuck Schumer, not been too bad. The pushing of Biden on student debt, a little bit of credit for him, for sure.
A little bit of credit when you've got AOC nipping at his heels.
And he kept the caucus together yeah, exactly. Well, she should wait until the day before the filing deadline to say, I'm not going to do it. Just to push him as far left as you can the day before the deadline.
Absolutely. Obviously, I was going to play a thought of Bernie saying, this is one of the most historic pieces of legislation for working people. It is huge. I mean, there's estimates that it would reduce, especially because of those child tax credits, reduce child poverty by half, and even more so in the Black community. So it's big. Yes, there were bad things, concessions. $15 minimum wage got left out despite Bernie's attempts. $400 of extended unemployment benefits turned to $300 and is shortened to just the beginning of September. And then, of course, the threshold or the bar you have to meet for getting a check is now $75,000. Under Trump, it was $100,000. They were going to do 80. But basically, they did it. It's not bad. Overall thoughts, Emma, on this historic legislation, the fact that there's a T after 1.9.
Yeah, so I have a lot of complicated thoughts that, I think there's a cottage industry on the left right now where we're on the left, Jimmy Dore, where you can just express outrage about everything and nothing's sufficient. And this is—
How dare you?
Yeah, I'm sorry for bringing him up on the show. Jimmy Dore.
Debate me.
Think you're a hack and bad for the world. Anyway, so there's a cottage industry on the left where as long as you express enough vitriolic emotion about what the Democratic Party is doing, okay, you'll always have an audience because nothing will be sufficient. But a lot of reporters, like Zach Carter, for example, is a great reporter from HuffPost. He made this point on Twitter the other day. Look at the Democratic Party 4 years ago with what they're proposing now. Okay, fine, that's too short of a timeline. Look at the Democratic Party 12 years ago with what's happening right now, with what was happening under the first term of Obama, when he had a lot more Democrats at his disposal in the Senate. to actually make legislation happen and make things more progressive. And they were terrified of that T, as you said, Francesca, the T number, the $1 trillion number. Now, okay, they didn't want to go over 2 trillion. Basically, that seemed to be kind of Biden's threshold and the Democratic orthodoxy. But still, this was a really good bill. And yeah, he marketed the checks in this really sleazy, weaselly way that I think could bite Democrats if in the long run. But at the same time, 87% of families, something like that, of kids of who have 2 kids and 2 parents are going to be getting over $5,000.
Yep.
In the mail. Whoa.
Yep.
$1,400 checks going out to millions and millions of Americans. Oh, you know, was the numbers over 250 million Americans, something like that?
Yeah.
Or over 200 million Americans. Again, it's like 10 p.m. for me, so I'm getting my numbers fuzzy. And
yeah, no, it is around that. Yeah.
Red wine. Obviously. So something around that. That's really significant. And the extension of unemployment through August, September is key as well. So this is a good to very good bill in terms of what we're measuring it up against with the Democratic Party. Now,
we've been so focused on, sorry, just quickly, we've been so focused on what it's not including that we haven't really talked honestly about what it is including.
And I can fall into that trap too. And what Sam does really well for me on the show is he just ran through it the other day and highlighted all of the great things that it does. And so there is a key difference in what party is running this country right now, even if the Democratic Party is as weak and feckless as it is and is, completely lacking in gumption and everything that we care about. There's a substantive difference, especially when you look at what the moderate Republicans like Susan Collins were proposing on the other side. There's a reason that there were 0 Republican votes on this bill. 0 in the House and in the Senate was because they were never going to get anything close to this. And the good thing politically is that Democrats like Biden, even though he's way more conservative than a lot of the base and a lot of the current Democratic electorate, or I should say elected officials, he learned the lesson that, okay, even if I think this is too much from a number standpoint, artificially, our electoral butts are on the line if we don't pass something big, because the recovery under Obama was way too slow because they listened to the wrong people. And so I'm glad that they at least learned one lesson from losing.
Stop inheriting these fucking and like the dumpster fires that Bush and Trump have left you and going halfway on that shit. You will get slaughtered later. You can't go halfway. They're leaving you debts. They're leaving you wars. They're leaving you bullshit. Yes, you're full of bullshit too, but don't underestimate what you've been left with. And you're going to be stuck holding the bill for all this. So you're absolutely right. To have something this bold is really important. NATO.
The other highlights of the bill to me, $350 billion for cities and states, $170 billion for schools, and $100 billion for public health. So for me, Emma, when I'm not mouthing off on here, I'm also a union organizer, and I work with a public sector union that mostly represents local government workers. And this is going to change. This legislation will change my members' lives this week, literally. Like, in public transit agencies where, ridership is down because of COVID, or public school districts that are trying to figure out how to upgrade their ventilation from like 1940s, asbestos filtration systems to be able to reopen safely. Like, this is an immediate lifeline. It means stopping layoffs. It means stopping pay cuts for low-wage workers of color in the public sector, like this week. So, and I just feel like I totally agree with you. There's a strain among progressives and people on the left. Like, this is a classic NATO green joke. We would rather protest losing than win. People who, were more committed to Joe Biden and the Democrats validating their priors that Democrats are sellouts, than seeing that the details of this bill it's not because Joe Biden suddenly became a virtuous person. It's because of the organizing that people have done in the last 4 years to push the Democratic Party and to change the politics of the country.
And because of what one man did too, Bernie Sanders. I mean, yeah, I said this in his 2016 run and in his 2020 run when he didn't eventually win. And I didn't mean to cut you off, Nato, but just to make this point,
I'm a white guy. I don't mind being interrupted.
Yeah, obviously. Well, I mean,
I'll bounce back.
you actually have to take it because
it's reparations.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So Bernie Sanders.
I'm not going to forget my train of thought. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I almost did. Bernie Sanders shifted the Overton window in such a way, and the organizers that work with him, obviously. But like, this is what people don't get about campaigns too, is that what's so important about campaigns and what they do is that they create an infrastructure and they move people and move the conversation in a different way, which is why Amy McGrath's run in Kentucky was such an outrage. If you had Charles Booker, you could have had a situation like what happened with Stacey Abrams in Georgia, where she didn't win, which was, it was like, she was probably cheated out of it. But what she set up there was, oh, wait, we can win in this state. A lot of people thought that. And then the organizing infrastructure, and then the volunteers and the people, and everything's in place. And so it works on an ideological level and an electoral level as well.
Yeah, and it goes a little bit to what we were talking about in terms of Sinema, who, if y'all didn't know, I'm sure everyone who listens to the podcast and watches this knows that she was one of the 8 senators, Democratic senators, to vote down an amendment to add $15 minimum wage raise to the bill. And she sort of curtsied when she did it. But, people are rightfully talking about senators that were hugely supported by the DCCC as like, oh, Kyrsten Sinema is going to be great. This is a huge turn. And, you're talking about Amy McGrath and picking the wrong horse, like Kyrsten Sinema, like turning on, I don't know who the hell she was elected to be, but she's not turning out that way. Hey, thanks so much for watching the Bitchuation Room podcast live stream. And while you're here, why don't you just subscribe to this channel? I promise it'll be good.